The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m., but by 6:30, the community center parking lot was already full. Local news vans lined the street, their satellite dishes stretching skyward like mechanical flowers. Inside, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife as Tom Martinez approached the podium, his forensic report projected on the screen behind him. The evidence is conclusive. Tom's steady voice filled the silent room. 8 months ago, Thompson Development ELC submitted plans for a commercial complex. Their approval hinged on one crucial detail: access through what they claimed would be a newly acquired community road. He clicked to the next slide, displaying a damning email chain between Barbara and the developers, complete with discussions of six-figure consulting fees. Barbara, seated in the front row without her usual pearls, stared straight ahead as Tom methodically outlined her scheme. The plan had been simple: use the HOA to seize Sarah's private road, then fast-track the development approval using her authority as president. The consulting fees were just the beginning. Her husband's company stood to make millions. Point of order. Michael Stewart, the real estate agent, stood up. Everyone tensed, expecting him to defend Barbara. Instead, he turned to face her. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current HOA leadership, followed by a full audit of all property acquisitions under President Thompson's tenure. The vote was unanimous. As Barbara stormed out through the side door, her resignation letter already drafted on her phone, Sarah felt no satisfaction, only relief and a strange sense of sadness for how power had corrupted someone who'd once been a respected community leader. The aftermath brought unexpected healing. Tom Martinez, elected as interim president, immediately established a property owner's bill of rights. Sarah's road remained private, but she worked with the new board to create an emergency access agreement that benefited everyone. The development company, facing scrutiny over their tactics, withdrew their plans and issued a public apology. 6 months later, Sarah was tending her flower beds when a familiar SUV pulled up. Barbara stepped out, looking different without her power suits and pearls. I'm not here to cause trouble, she said quickly, holding up her hands. I'm selling my house, moving closer to my grandkids. But before I go, I needed to say something. They sat on Sarah's porch, sharing awkward silence before Barbara spoke. I convinced myself I was improving the community, but really I was destroying what made it special. She gestured to the road, where neighborhood kids were riding bikes while their parents chatted nearby. You fought for more than just property rights. You fought for the soul of this place. Sarah watched as two neighbors, one with a faded green ribbon still on their mailbox, another with a barely visible blue one, waved to each other across the street. Maybe that's what we all needed to remember, she replied. A community isn't about who controls it. It's about who shows up for each other. As Barbara drove away for the last time, Sarah noticed Rose Jenkins organizing a community garden project where the development was supposed to be. Sometimes, she realized, the best victories aren't about winning or losing. They're about rediscovering what matters most. The autumn morning dew still clung to Sarah Chen's windshield as she returned from her morning shift at the hospital. 15 years of driving this familiar gravel road had taught her every dip and curve, but today something was different. Through the dissipating fog, she spotted 3 figures standing near her property line, their business attire oddly formal against the rural backdrop of her countryside home. Barbara Thompson, the newly elected Oak Ridge Estates HOA president, stood center stage in her trademark pearls and perfectly pressed blazer, flanked by 2 board members wielding tablets and measuring tools. They were photographing Sarah's private road with the kind of attention usually reserved for crime scenes. The crunch of gravel beneath Sarah's tires announced her arrival, but none of them bothered to look up from their task. Perfect timing, Barbara called out, her voice carrying that particular tone of forced pleasantry that set Sarah's teeth on edge. Before Sarah could even put her car in park, Barbara was at her window, manicured hand thrust through the opening with an official-looking document. We're conducting a safety audit of all access roads in the greater Oak Ridge community. Sarah's exhaustion from her 12-hour nursing shift evaporated, replaced by a cold knot of dread as she scanned the letter. Words jumped out at her. Immediate jurisdiction, community safety concerns, mandatory compliance. The HOA was claiming ownership of her private road, the very road she'd spent thousands maintaining over the years. There must be some mistake, Sarah said, fumbling with her seatbelt to get out of the car. This road is deeded to my property. I just took out a $15,000 loan last spring to have it resurfaced. Barbara's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. The board has determined that private roads pose significant liability issues for our growing community. We'll be assuming maintenance responsibilities and ownership, effective immediately. She gestured to her colleagues, who were now hammering a future HOA development sign into Sarah's carefully tended flower bed. You can't just, Sarah started, but Barbara was already walking away, her heels somehow maintaining perfect balance on the gravel. You'll find all the legal documentation in that packet, Barbara called over her shoulder. The monthly HOA fees for road maintenance will be $175, starting next month. We'll need your compliance paperwork by Friday. The trio climbed into a gleaming SUV, leaving Sarah standing in her driveway, clutching papers that threatened everything she'd worked for. Inside her house, Sarah's hands shook as she spread the documents across her kitchen table. Property maps, legal citations, HOA bylaws, all carefully crafted to look legitimate, but something felt wrong. The HOA had no right to claim private property, did they? Her phone buzzed. 3 messages from neighbors asking if she'd heard the news. Apparently, Barbara had been busy this morning. Sarah reached for her deed box in the upper cabinet, determination replacing her initial shock. This wasn't just about a road anymore. It was about standing up to someone who thought they could bully their way into controlling other people's lives. As she began photographing her property documents, Sarah had no idea she was about to become the centerpiece of a neighborhood war that would change their community forever. Sarah's security camera notification pinged at 5:17 a.m. The pre-dawn footage showed Barbara and 2 board members methodically placing future HOA development signs along her road, measuring distances with military precision. When Sarah confronted them an hour later, Barbara's response was practiced, rehearsed. Removing HOA property is vandalism. Would you like me to call the police? The psychological warfare escalated daily. Someone, though no one would admit who, had scattered roofing nails across Sarah's gravel road. Her elderly neighbor Rose found her mailbox stuffed with glossy flyers warning about dangerous private roads and declining property values. The community Facebook group, once filled with lost pet notices and gardening tips, became a battlefield of accusations and counter-accusations. But the HOA's pressure campaign backfired in unexpected ways. When Sarah's night shift nursing colleagues heard about the nails, they organized a dawn patrol, sweeping the road with magnetic rollers before she drove home. Local teenagers, led by Rose's grandson, began posting TikTok videos documenting the HOA Karen war, complete with security camera footage of Barbara's early morning sign planting expedition. The videos went viral, drawing unwanted attention to Oak Ridge Estates. You need to see this, Tom Martinez said one evening, appearing at Sarah's door with a thick folder. The retired forensic accountant had been quietly investigating since Rose's revelation at the HOA meeting. I've been reviewing public records. Barbara's husband's construction company filed permits for a commercial development 3 months ago. Guess what they listed as the primary access road? Sarah's kitchen table disappeared under Tom's documentation. Permit applications, corporate filings, email printouts. Barbara's safety campaign was a smokescreen. The HOA president had already promised developers access through Sarah's private road and received a substantial consulting fee for her cooperation. The revelation sparked a grassroots resistance. Green ribbons began appearing on mailboxes throughout the neighborhood, signaling support for Sarah. Barbara's supporters retaliated with blue ribbons, but their numbers were dwindling as Tom's discoveries circulated. The local coffee shop became an unofficial war room, with residents huddled over laptops, reviewing HOA bylaws and property records. Barbara's desperation showed in increasingly erratic behavior. Construction equipment appeared overnight, blocking Sarah's road, equipment that mysteriously disappeared when local news vans showed up. Anonymous letters circulated claiming Sarah planned to sell her land to a waste management company. But each accusation only strengthened the community's resolve to uncover the truth. The breaking point came when Rose Jenkins received a letter threatening to revoke her grandfathered HOA exemptions if she continued supporting Sarah. Rose's grandson posted it online, and within hours, the story was picked up by regional news outlets. As reporters began digging into Oak Ridge Estate's governance, even Barbara's staunchest allies realized their pristine community was about to become infamous for all the wrong reasons. The Oak Ridge Estates Community Center buzzed with tension as residents filed in for the emergency HOA meeting. Sarah noticed how people naturally segregated themselves. Longtime residents clustered near the back, while newer homeowners, many still sporting their designer workout wear from the HOA-managed fitness center, claimed the front rows. Barbara Thompson stood at the podium, reviewing her notes with the intensity of a prosecutor preparing for trial. "Order, please," Barbara's voice cut through the murmurs. "We're here to discuss the integration of non-conforming access roads into our community infrastructure." She clicked to the first slide of her presentation, displaying a photo of Sarah's road with glaring red circles highlighting supposed safety hazards. Sarah's hand shot up immediately, but Barbara smoothly continued, "Questions will be addressed during the designated commentary period." The projector hummed as Barbara advanced through slides showing accident statistics from private roads, none from their area, and property value projections that seemed suspiciously optimistic. Finally, during the open discussion, Sarah approached the microphone, her property deed and maintenance records clutched in trembling hands. "I have documentation proving," she began, but a chorus of interruptions drowned her out. "My children's safety matters more than your paperwork," shouted Karen Wilson from the yoga group. "Property values are dropping because of that ISO," added Michael Stewart, a real estate agent who'd recently joined the board. The room erupted into competing voices until a sharp tap 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 silenced everyone. Rose Jenkins, an 84-year-old widow who'd lived in the neighborhood since before it had paved roads, slowly made her way to the microphone with her walker. Barbara's carefully maintained smile faltered. Rose had served on the original township board decades ago. "I remember when this community meant something more than property values." Rose's voice quavered but carried authority. "Last winter, when the main road was iced over, and I needed emergency medical care, it was Sarah's well-maintained private road that the ambulance used to reach me. She was out there at midnight with her snow shovel, clearing the path herself." Rose turned to face the crowd. "Now, I've watched Barbara's husband's construction company trucks surveying that road last week. Funny how that wasn't mentioned in this presentation." A heavy silence fell over the room. Barbara's face flushed as she quickly shuffled her papers. That's not relevant to tonight's discussion," she stammered. But the damage was done. Whispers rippled through the crowd as people began connecting dots they hadn't noticed before. Sarah watched as several newer residents who'd been nodding along with Barbara now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Tom Martinez, a retired forensic accountant who'd remained quiet throughout the debate, was scribbling notes with sudden interest. Even Michael Stewart, the real estate agent, was frowning at his tablet, furiously typing. The meeting ended with Barbara calling for an immediate vote on road acquisition, but for the first time, her usual supporters seemed hesitant. As people filed out, Sarah overheard fragments of conversations that suggested the tide was turning. The battle for her road wasn't over, but thanks to Rose's revelation, the neighborhood was finally asking the right questions.